You want to know if you're on track financially for retirement. But what if I told you that the numbers that put you in the top 25%, 10%, and 1% of retiring Americans have very little impact on retirement satisfaction unless you can do 3 other things? In this video, I'm going to share several key reports that illustrate why the happiest retirees aren't always the ones with the most money. I'm Jared Kinney, Wealth Advisor with the Noble Group. We're here to give clarity on your money so you can feel confident in your future. So let's start with a reality check. The median net worth, the 50th percentile, for Americans aged 65 to 69 is about $394,000. Now this number includes home equity, not just retirement accounts and savings accounts. And I'm curious how this number aligns with you, because based on some recent surveys, it's pretty far off from the ideal number most people have in their mind. And what do I mean by that? Well, these surveys that have come out asked Americans how much they think they need to comfortably retire. And the responses these surveys got were consistently around the $1 million mark. Now it gets really interesting when we look at what net worth is needed to be in the top 25%, because that number is about $1.15 million. So we're already starting to see a story here, right? Most Americans say they need about $1 million to retire, but only 25% are actually there. But I want to share a story that I think will illustrate something that these surveys and these numbers can't really capture. I had a couple come in who were convinced they were behind for retirement. They were both teachers, very modest people, and they had spent years hearing financial media talk about needing millions and millions of dollars to comfortably retire. When they first sat down with me, they almost seemed embarrassed to share their numbers because they thought they hadn't done enough. Between their retirement accounts, savings, and home equity, they had a little over $900,000 in total net worth. The husband told me, "I feel like we missed it somewhere along the way." But as we started walking through their plan, something changed. They had 2 pensions, Social Security benefits that would cover a large portion of their needs, very little debt, and most importantly, a lifestyle they genuinely enjoyed that wasn't centered around spending money. They loved spending time with their grandkids, volunteering at church, taking short road trips, and gardening together. So once we built out the actual retirement income plan and stress tested it for inflation, taxes, and market volatility, we realized they weren't behind at all. In fact, they were in a much stronger position than they realized. I'll never forget the wife looking over at her husband and saying, "So can we stop worrying now?" At this point, I want to share another interesting report with you that found 2 things. 1, 92% of Americans reported that they were moderately satisfied or very satisfied with their life in retirement. And 2, the report also suggested that there's a very weak correlation between Americans' finances and their retirement satisfaction. This couple is a great illustration of what this survey found. When it comes to money, the actual number is often secondary. Whether that money can provide you happiness and purpose in retirement is the real question. And for them, it absolutely did. But now, let's look at what it takes to make it into the top 10% of retirees. And before we talk about this group, let me know if this video is resonating with you so far by leaving a like or a comment down below. So to be in the top 10%, you need a net worth of about $2.9 million. Now at this level, some habits can really get magnified to a very high degree. Some habits we want to magnify, like strong budgeting or saving, but let me share a story that I think you'll find interesting. I had a client who was an extremely successful business owner, very driven. By almost every traditional financial measure, he had already won the game. His net worth was several million dollars, his investments were growing, and he had more than enough to retire comfortably. But every conversation kept coming back to the same thing. I need to get to the next number. And the next number kept growing. 4 million, then 5 million. At one point, he told me his goal was $8 million. So I asked him a simple question. What changes in your life when you hit that number? And at first, he didn't really have an answer. But the deeper we got into the conversation, the more we uncovered what was really underneath it. He wasn't chasing $8 million because he wanted a bigger house or a better lifestyle. Instead, he was terrified that his wife wouldn't be financially secure if something happened to him. So we ran the plan. We mapped out the income his wife would need, modeled different market scenarios, looked at taxes, insurance, survivor income, all of it. And what surprised him the most was that he had already accomplished the goal he truly cared about years earlier. I watched the tension leave his face in real time. And shortly after that conversation, he started spending more time with his family, cutting back his workload, and focusing less on accumulation and more on enjoying the life he had already built. So don't just focus on hitting a number. Think about what's really behind that number and build a plan based on that. And if your advisor isn't talking with you about a comprehensive plan that coordinates your income, your investments, savings, and tax strategies all together, I'll show you how to get a free retirement review from us at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around. So now we find ourselves at the very top 1% of Americans. That number is about $22.1 million. Again, this is income, investments, savings, and home equity for those ages 65 to 69. Now, if you're part of this group and you're watching this video, congratulations, hitting a big milestone. But for the other 99% of us, let's be honest with ourselves. We will probably never hit that number, but that's not a bad thing. I want you to remember that report we talked about earlier. 92% of Americans, regardless of how much they had saved, said they were moderately satisfied or very satisfied with their retirement. And again, remember that the report also said that there's very little correlation between finances and retirement satisfaction. So knowing this, how do we actually work towards happiness in retirement? Well, there's one more report that gives us a pretty clear picture. Now, this report was from a study conducted by Dr. Michael FINRA, who surveyed 20,000 retirees on questions regarding life satisfaction. And what he found was the factors that determined happiness the most tended to cluster into three distinct pillars. The first was social activities. The research showed that for retirees who spent more time socializing daily, there was a high correlation with higher life satisfaction. For example, 70% of retirees who spent at least 4 hours a day socializing reported high levels of enjoyment and happiness in retirement. But only 44% of retirees who spent little to no time socializing reported the same levels of happiness. Now, I've seen this play out with my own clients. I had a couple a few years ago who spent nearly 2 full years looking for the perfect house in a 55+ community. And every few months they'd call me and say, "Oh, we found another one to look at." Now, each time the community had a bigger clubhouse, better golf course, nicer amenities, but they could never pull the trigger. Something just never felt right to them. And eventually, during one of our meetings, the wife finally said something that changed the whole conversation. She said, "I don't think we're actually looking for a house." See, they realized they weren't chasing square footage or a nicer neighborhood. What they really wanted was connection. They wanted close friendships, activities, a reason to get out of the house, a stronger social life after leaving work behind. Now, once they had that moment of realization, everything changed. They stopped obsessing over the perfect home and started instead to focus on building the perfect lifestyle. And it became very apparent to me that they were significantly happier once they shifted their attention away from the house and toward the people around them. Now, when they come into meetings, we still review their financial plan, of course, but half of the conversation is about their social calendar. They're telling me about their neighborhood dinners, pickleball leagues, trips with friends, volunteer events, and all the things they're involved in. And to me, that's one of the clearest examples of what a successful retirement actually looks like. Now, the second pillar that determines happiness in this study was personal health. Of course, it's impossible for us to know exactly what our health will look like throughout retirement, but FINRA's research says that those who invested in healthy activities, foods, and quality medical care oftentimes had higher levels of satisfaction. In fact, retirees in the study who rated their health as good or excellent had a satisfaction level 58% higher than those who said their health was poor. Just like social connections, health is another non-money investment that can pay dividends for your happiness during retirement. The final pillar is money related, but more specifically, it's having a source of predictable income. FINRA's research found that retirees who had at least $3,000 of monthly guaranteed income ended up spending more in retirement than those who had at least $3,000 in investment income instead. Oftentimes, this also led to more retirement happiness and satisfaction. For a lot of retirees, guaranteed income means Social Security, maybe a pension. But it can also mean taking a look at annuities that, if invested in properly, can help build that confidence in spending that a lot of retirees are looking for. But the biggest piece to all of this is a plan, because what a plan allows you to do is look beyond just hitting a number. It allows you to focus on creating the happiness and satisfaction that you deserve to have in retirement. And as I alluded to earlier, building and optimizing retirement plans is what we work on every day. And we're happy to show you what that process looks like with a free retirement review. So click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to let us know where you're at in your journey and schedule time with us. Thanks for watching.